Have you ever had one of those weeks where your phone feels heavier than a brick? Not because it weighs anything, because every notification feels like a tiny hand reaching into your chest. Another hey to answer, another group chat you don't have the emotional bandwidth to interpret, another plan you have to react to with the correct level of enthusiasm so nobody thinks you're rude, depressed, or secretly plotting against them. So you do what you always do, you disappear. You don't mean to ghost anyone. You're not trying to punish people. You're not playing games. You just stop responding. You stop being reachable. You go quiet. You retreat into your own little cave like a phone battery version of a bear preparing for winter. And then, 2 days later, you come back like nothing happened. You reappear. You like a few posts. You reply with, sorry, I've been so busy. Even though the truth is more specific, I've been full. If that's you, you're not alone. And you're not broken. People who disappear to recharge are often described as flaky, distant, inconsistent, avoidant, sometimes even arrogant, like they think they're too good for everyone. But psychologically, disappearing to recharge usually isn't about not caring. It's about capacity. It's about a nervous system that reaches its limit and hits a silent emergency switch. Reduce input. Let me show you what might be happening inside your brain when you're the person who needs solitude the way other people need sleep. Because for some minds, social interaction isn't just fun. It's processing, it's bandwidth, it's emotional labor. Imagine your social energy like a phone battery. I know, classic metaphor, but it works because it's painfully accurate. Some people walk into a crowded room and their battery charges. They talk, laugh, bounce between conversations, and they leave feeling more alive than when they arrived. Other people walk into the same room and their battery starts draining quietly. Not because they hate people, not because they're antisocial, but because their brain is doing more work. They're tracking tone, reading micro expressions, managing their responses, monitoring how they're coming across, filtering what to say and what not to say, keeping up with the speed, processing the noise, processing the social rules. It's like your brain is running 20 tabs at once. So when you disappear, you're not being dramatic. You're closing tabs. And if you're someone who has ever needed to go quiet after a social day, even after a social day you enjoyed, that's a sign your nervous system is sensitive to stimulation. Psychologists often describe introversion and extroversion partly through stimulation thresholds. In simple terms, some people feel best at lower stimulation, and too much input pushes them toward overload. Other people have higher thresholds and feel understimulated without more interaction. Neither is better. But the world is often built like everyone is a high stimulation person. Constant messages, constant availability, constant connection. Which means if you're a lower stimulation person, you're basically living in a world that keeps turning the volume up. So you turn it down by disappearing. Now let's add another layer. Recharging is not just about being introverted. Sometimes it's about being highly empathic. If you naturally pick up other people's emotions, social interaction can feel like walking through a room where everyone is wearing their feelings as perfume. You walk in, and suddenly you're inhaling stress, excitement, insecurity, tension, sadness. Some of it isn't even yours, but your body still responds. That's why some people can hang out with one person and feel fine, but hang out with 5 people and feel wrecked. More people means more emotional atmospheres to process, so you retreat to reset your emotional baseline. Another reason people disappear is anxiety, especially social anxiety or performance anxiety. For some people, interacting isn't just being, it's performing, even with friends, and even with family. You feel like you have to be on. You have to be entertaining, responsive, warm, interesting. You have to reply with the right tone so nobody misreads you, and after a while, that's exhausting. This is where avoidance sneaks in. Not avoidance of people, but avoidance of the pressure you associate with being reachable. Because here's the thing, nobody says out loud, being accessible is a job. And if your nervous system treats it like a job, you will eventually clock out. That's when you go silent. Now, I want to talk about the guilt that often comes after, because that's part of the pattern too. You disappear, you finally feel calm, and then you remember you have messages, and your stomach drops. Now you have to return. And returning feels like walking back into a room where you left mid-sentence. And so you procrastinate returning, which makes the silence longer, which makes the guilt stronger, which makes returning feel even harder. And now your recharge isn't just rest, it's a loop. This loop is common in people who are both sensitive and conscientious. You care about people, you care about being respectful, you don't want to hurt anyone, but you also need space. So you get stuck between two needs, connection and recovery. And if you've ever felt like you're bad at maintaining friendships, because of this, I want you to hear something clearly. Needing space does not mean you lack love. It means your nervous system has a different rhythm. Some people love like a constant stream, others love like tides. They pull back, then return. Pull back, then return. Tides are not less loyal than streams. They just move differently. Now, let's get a little deeper into the why, because sometimes disappearing isn't only about stimulation. Sometimes it's about boundaries you never learned to set. If you're the kind of person who says yes too easily, who replies too fast, who emotionally overextends, you might be using disappearance as your only boundary. Because you never learned how to say, I need a day. You never learned how to say, I can't talk right now. You never learned how to be unavailable without feeling like you're being mean. So your body forces it. It shuts down access for you. That's why some people only get solitude after they hit burnout. They don't schedule rest. They crash into it. And that crash can look like ghosting. Not because you're careless, because you're overloaded. There's also an attachment angle here. Some people who disappear have an avoidant attachment style, meaning closeness can feel nice, but too much closeness can trigger discomfort. Not because they don't care, but because their nervous system associates dependence with risk. So when things get emotionally intense, they pull back to feel in control again. If that resonates, don't panic. It doesn't mean you're doomed in relationships. It means your system learned that distance equals safety, and you can update that. But here's the key. Not everyone who disappears is avoidant. A lot of people are just overwhelmed, or burnt out, or overstimulated, or carrying too much in their life. Sometimes recharge isn't a personality trait, it's a season. Now let's make this practical without turning it into a lecture. If you disappear to recharge, the goal isn't to become someone who's available 24/7. That's not healthy for anyone. The goal is to build a version of your disappearing that doesn't burn bridges. A version that is honest, gentle, and self-respecting. Because you can protect your energy without vanishing like a magician. Sometimes it's as simple as a one-line message that saves your relationships. Hey, I'm not ignoring you. I'm just recharging. I'll reply when I'm back. That sentence is like putting a back in 30 minutes sign on your emotional shop. You're still a good person. You're just closed for maintenance. And if you struggle to send even that, that's a clue that your nervous system is afraid of disappointing people. Which might mean you've been trained to prioritize other people's comfort over your own capacity. But capacity matters because when you don't respect your limits, your body will enforce them. And it usually enforces them in the form of withdrawal. Now, here's a perspective shift I love. Your need to recharge is not a flaw, it's feedback. It's your brain telling you, this is too much input, I need quiet to reset. Quiet isn't emptiness, quiet is processing space. It's where your brain sorts the day. It's where your emotions settle. It's where your identity returns after being shaped by everyone else's energy. And if you're someone who disappears, you might actually be very attuned, very sensitive, very thoughtful. You might be the kind of person who can show up deeply when you're resourced. So your job isn't to stop needing space. Your job is to build a life where you can get space before you collapse, i.e., to schedule your recharge like it's essential, because it is, and also to find people who understand your rhythm, people who don't take your quiet personally, people who can handle your tide. Because the right people won't demand constant availability as proof of love. They'll understand that you return, that you care, that your silence isn't rejection, it's maintenance. So if you disappear to recharge, tell me in the comments. What drains you the most? Group chats, social events, emotional conversations, constant texting, work stress, or just life in general? And when you come back, do you feel refreshed? Or do you feel guilty? Subscribe if you want more psychology videos that make your habits feel understandable instead of shameful, because your patterns aren't random. They're your nervous system trying to survive modern life. And once you understand them, you can shape them without letting them shape you.